Okay, first fraternity I joined. Uh, well, I gotta say a little about my girlfriend. My girlfriend was a year ahead of me. We met on North Campus because we were both in adjacent dorms, summer quarter of '66. Her name was Joanne Ilhart. She was from South Euclid, Ohio. And she liked me, and I figured if somebody likes me, then I should like them back. And so, we got to know each other a little bit better fall quarter when I came back to school, because there was a month break between summer and fall. And so we're still both on North Campus dorms. And she taught me a lot about Cleveland and Clevelanders, because she grew up on the East Side adjacent to Shaker Heights and Cleveland Heights. And, there was a nightlife college activity that was pretty stimulating, actually, where kids could go and listen to bands and drink beer. But I got the bright idea. Somebody invited me to join a fraternity. And it was actually a fraternity made up of Catholics, or people that were raised Catholic. I think it was called Phi Kappa Beta, something like that. They were on 15th Avenue. Well, Joanne's good friend Barbara Janko had two brothers, older brothers, that went to Ohio State. And one of them had been a member of this very same fraternity. And I don't know if he spoke ill of it or what, but for some reason Barbara hated that. Barbara quite honestly hated the idea of fraternities anyway. But when she found out I was pledging this particular fraternity, she gave me her very opinionated dislike of my attempt to do that. I went ahead and did it anyway, and again, at a certain point, they're going to want your money because you're a pledge, and I didn't have any money. I mean, that's probably why I started getting a job about that time. So anyway, that didn't last long. I mean, that didn't even carry over. But I did go to a couple of social events that were so-so. Come around then, that was fall quarter of 66, 67. So went the whole academic year, grades were getting worse. So that fall quarter of 67, this was the precipice. Make it or break it, Jim. Are you going to stay in college? No, I'm going to take 20 hours and I'm going to get 2 or 3 jobs all at once, and I'm going to pledge another fraternity. So I was in ROTC. Back then, all undergrad men at Ohio State, because it's a land grant college, had to take ROTC. And you're in a college or an Army uniform. And I'm living on Chittenden then. And you have to go to the parade grounds, which no longer exists. It's down where south of the stadium where the tower dorms are. And that's where they'd have these Army formations of really college freshmen playing Army. But the upperclassmen, for them, it was, they were going to graduate and be officers. So that's the function it served. So anyway, I'm hitchhiking because I got to get to the parade ground on time. This guy stops and picks me up. And he asks me, we're friendly, making chatter, and this guy says, you know anything about ATO? And I go, no. And he goes, well, why don't you come? We're going to have a mixer this evening. You can come and have dinner with us, and we can show you around the house. We got our own house. You can be damn glad to meet us. So that they were up on Indianola, just north of 15th. And I thought, well, these guys don't look as bad as the Catholics. The Catholics are kind of dorky, quite honestly. This looks like a cool fraternity. Maybe I'll try this. And at that time, and maybe it still is, I don't know. Well, I know Catherine went to a sorority. Jeannie was in a sorority. So, there was a legitimate need to be in the Greek community back then. But a lot of people weren't. And at Ohio State, a lot of people made fun of them. And, saying they couldn't think independently and stuff like that. So I stuck around because, well, that was the end of my college career anyway, that quarter. So, but I ended up not having to pay them anything because I, again, didn't have the money. And besides, it was just like the woman telling me, well, you got to take the final even though you're going to get an F. Well, you got to pay us. No, I don't. I'm no longer a student. But, and I know we had a huge party at my apartment the last weekend I was in Columbus because I knew when I was going to go home and go to the Army. And my two roommates had to scramble and find, because our rent was based upon what the three of us could contribute. And so Pete and Dave had to go and find something else somewhere else to live.
Wait, back up. When did you get an apartment?
That was fall quarter of '67, so we just had it for one quarter. And it was 60 East Chittenden, well, it was only East, 60 Chittenden. It was a 3-story, only about 15 units, relatively small, just sandwiched in between a couple of typical old campus houses. And Pete, my roommate Pete, was from Lodi. I'd known him since age 8. And he still lives here in Bexley. He's
Is that Dag? Pete Dag?
Pete Dag, okay. Yeah.
And then
his roommate from freshman year was Dave Harris. And Dave's major was entomology. So he was already into insects and stuff. But he was, both of them were really serious students. I mean, they studied every night. Not this guy. I had absolutely no business being there.
So you mentioned when you knew you were leaving and going into the Army.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought you were drafted after leaving OSU because you were no longer a student.
True, but I kept in that apartment for as long as we could. I still wanted a social life on campus. So that was January of '68. I had to report to the Army February 12th. So I got a job. I was a waiter at what we called clean Sharberts. There was dirty Sharberts. Next door to it was Char Bar, again, Charles, Robert. And it was kind of a fraternity bar. But around the corner on 15th, I don't even know what's there now, but for the longest time there was a pizza place in there. But it was a full service restaurant, the kind of place, students went there, but it was also the kind of place where when your mom and dad came to visit you on campus, you could have Sunday breakfast there. Because it was at the very bottom of Fraternity Row, so that explained most of their clientele. I got a job there as a waiter, and there was a couple of counters with stools, but there were booths and some 2 tops and 4 tops. So it probably seated 40 to 50 people. And I liked it because I met some new people. I met a woman that was a waitress there, server, what have you. And she drove around in one of these, Volkswagen made a pretty radical style change from the 67s to the 68 Bugs. It was still a Bug, still a Volkswagen, but it was just a little bit more modernized. And she drove one of those around. And she lived, I can't get away from this Sharbert thing. Dirty Sharberts on campus. Behind it, in fact, really attached to it, it's almost like Dirty Sharberts was an extension of the first floor of this grand old house. I'd like to think it's still there. On High, it was around 17th and High, 16th and High. Anyway, behind it, the house was 3 floors, probably divided into 4 apartments. It was like a rooming house, but everybody was independent on their own. And she had I mean, we're talking small, much smaller than this living room. I can't, it may or may not have had a kitchenette. I can't remember, which is odd because I actually lived there. But I, I was invited to her apartment, and she pulled the Murphy bed out from the floor, and where she had it rested, supported on 2 stereo speakers. It was great. Yeah. So I was so fond of that experience and that building and just that whole sensibility. I mean, who even knows what a Murphy bed is? When I got out of the Army, the very first place I got to live was, I can't be sure it was the same room as hers was, but it was on the first floor, and I had a stereo, and I remember the Stones had just released Let It Bleed. And Let It Bleed, if you remember, has the album cover where it's just a stack of records and films in round film canisters. That's phase 1. Phase 2, the whole thing had blown up and there was like half of a pizza on it and stuff. It's pretty impressive album cover. But and I was delivering subs for Jaime, and Dirty Sharberts had closed down to remodel. They opened up. It wasn't Dirty Sharberts anymore. It was just Sharberts. And guess who got a job there?
You did.
So I worked, okay, I guess I worked for those guys just 2 times. But if I consider paying them rent, then, of course, they paid me a wage. And never mind, making no sense out of that. But yeah, Sharberts was a big part of my life. There was a lot of disapproval of the renovated Sharberts. People would come in, because I worked lunch, and they'd come in the very same door that they used to come in before the renovation, which I think must have been the previous quarter, fall quarter. Honestly, they stood inside the doorway and stared and gawked and turned around and left. They didn't want any part of it. Part of the reason was the old Sharberts, it was an open kitchen. You saw Vi and Eula grilling those bagels on the grill and fulfilling everybody else's orders. And to order, you just, walked up to the counter, and sometimes there'd be a line. You'd get in line, and it would progress down the counter, and you'd give them your order, and then stand at the end, and they'd have it ready for you. It was very quick. And there might have been a backroom kitchen where they did prep, but the only 2 I ever saw was Vi and Eula.